Trump promised no new wars, no more regime change. He promised to be the candidate of peace. And here we are starting the year with regime change in Venezuela, kidnapping the leader of a sovereign nation. This is just absurd and insane, the hypocrisy from this president. And this is nothing new. Trump actually also promised to be draining the swamp, to head on the elites, to take out the neocons and all that stuff. Yet here he is doing their bidding, and we have a great clip from Jon Stewart highlighting the exact parallels between Venezuela and George Bush's Iraq.
I'm not even going to play around anymore. It. Hit me with the works. Iraq, Venezuela, go!
We're giving them full opportunity to do it the easy way. And when it doesn't work, we'll do it the hard way.
If we could do things the easy way, that's fine. And if we have to do it the hard way, that's fine too.
Chemical weapons is a threat to the United States.
Fentanyl poses a chemical weapons threat to the United States.
Al-Qaeda terrorists inside Iraq.
Al-Qaeda of our hemisphere.
We can get rid of Saddam. It could really begin to transform the region.
There's an opportunity to transform the entire region.
Bringing freedom and democracy.
Democracy and freedom can serve as a beacon of hope.
Shock and awe.
Shock and awe indeed.
So there we have it. Same playbook, same words, same propaganda. Mike, what do you make of this? I was saying in another video we did that Trump, one of his biggest lies out of all the thousands of lies that he's told, was the peace candidate lie. I think was his most egregious and most blatantly, obviously a lie. What do you make of him doing the bidding of U.S. imperialism when he claimed to be the one to drain the swamp?
Yeah, well, sadly, as you said, this is not new. This is history literally repeating itself. I think it's pretty terrible, but I'm not too surprised. This seems to be not only like a pattern of American behavior in general, because let's be real, Democrats can be a little bit, they kind of want wars a little bit as well. Kamala Harris was not wanting to condemn what was going on in Gaza, but at the same time, Republicans are the ones that lead us into these conflicts. This has been happening again and again. So I think to see this kind of propaganda being repeated quite literally word for word is interesting to see. We also saw Iraq propaganda being repeated earlier this year, or excuse me, I guess last year in 2025, with the strikes on Iran. Netanyahu was drumming up the same thing that he did when he was pitching us the same propaganda that he pitched us during the Iraq war about how we need to get rid of Saddam because he's making nukes and he's going to build a bomb and there's all this other stuff. And Iran has nukes and Iran is building bombs and there's plenty of compilation videos showing Netanyahu hyping up Iran's nuclear capabilities as being just days away, weeks away, months away, years away for like the past, I think, 25 years. So to see these kind of narratives be regurgitated over and over again, it's not terribly surprising because people use them. But I think what's so bold about it is America's backlash after the Iraq war was like almost kind of a never again situation. People said, whoa, this is terrible. So much so that even the right, even people who were for this, even people who considered it patriotic to go to war with Iraq and to liberate people and to provide democracy and freedom, all of them said, this isn't worth it. This is the cornerstone, I think, of the America First movement, was how disastrous Afghanistan and Iraq were. So it's extremely ironic that is the basis of this America First platform. And now they're so quick to just toss it aside and dive right in headfirst into the oil from Venezuela. I think that whether you agree with what's happening in Venezuela or not, whether you think Maduro's this dictator who needed to go, or if you think he's the people's president, whatever your position, I think what's abundantly clear is that regime change is bad. Imperialism is bad. These are things that never work out well. We have a proven track record of it. And as far as America's involvement with it, when it comes to the oil, Trump is supposed to be the great deal maker. Why can't we make a deal with them to peacefully exchange oil? And if they don't want to do business with us or they give us a bad deal, why don't we make a deal with another country that's got to deal with them and get it third party? Or there's a number of ways that this cat could be skinned. But to go in and literally invade the country, people are saying, oh, this isn't a war. If it was a war, there'd be boots on the ground. There'd be, thousands of people dead. There were people killed. People died from these strikes. Maybe if America, we don't know if Americans were killed. They claim no Americans were killed. So, if that's the case, fine. But that doesn't mean it's not an act of war. I don't see how the president of the country can be taken and just removed, and for that not to be considered a war or even an act of war. We covered in previous videos that they were talking about doing leaflets. And leaflets are considered an act of war, and they didn't do those. But then they blew up boats without authority, or just airstriking boats out of nowhere. That's an act of war. Then you've got all this pressure of sieging the waters and pretty much leaning on them with our military might. That's an act of war. Then you've got the actual blockade where we're stealing oil tankers. That's an act of war. And then finally the explosion at the dock committed by the CIA. This is an act of war. So it's just like again and again and again, there's more and more and more warlike activity. But I would say, at what point, if it's not a war by then, what is it? You have to tell me what it is. If this is not a war with Venezuela, what is it? Because we did this exact same thing with Iraq. Exact same thing. The only difference is methodology in going after the leader. That's it.
Trump did all the war things, all the war acts, short of calling it a war, like you mentioned. The leaflets was discussed very heavily, and they even planned to bomb Maduro on his birthday or try to capture him on his birthday. And that is something that was reported that they decided not to do. Sending down the world's largest aircraft carrier down to their waters, act of war. Bombing innocent fishing boats that they provided no evidence for being drug boats, act of war. The one that you also didn't even mention was closing their airspace. That is probably one of the most egregious acts of war, where you're literally saying good night to your whole, aviation and air economy is just dead. Huge act of war on their economy, on their, feeling of safety. It's just time and time again, they went through the list of acts of war, but the thing is, in their minds, it's not a war, and this is what the right wing also propagates, because the president did not declare war. It's all about wording. It's all about narratives. It's all about stories. If Trump doesn't say, we are now at war with Venezuela, then they can just pretend and close their eyes and ears and go, la, 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 we're not at war, and just repeat it like parrots. And it's like, yo, open your eyes, open your ears, and look at what's going on. If you were in Caracas 2 days ago, you would be like, we are at war. Bombs are falling out of the sky. If you were one of the men on those boats, either fishing or driving somewhere, apparently some of them were going to Suriname, not even headed to the US, and you had your fucking boat blown out of the sky into smithereens, you wouldn't even have time to say this is war because you'd be dead. So it's just insane, the point that we've gotten to. But this shows you how powerful the propaganda and the narrative shaping is, to where they've gotten this far. They actually got to the point where they kidnapped the leader of a foreign nation along with his wife, and they were able to get away with that. I mean, crazy times we're living in, Mike.
Can't agree with you more there. And I think you bring up a great point about the wording, and how people are looking specifically for Trump to say this is a war. It reminds me a lot of the whole thing with Elon Musk and the Nazi salute at the inauguration. People are saying, oh, it wasn't a Sieg Heil, it was a Roman salute, it was this, it was that. Because if it was, Elon would say it was, but he's not. He's saying it's something different. So it's clearly something different, even though your own eyes tell you it's a Sieg Heil. So we have a lot of this blatant sort of double speak or whatever you want to call it, this like semantical argument that the right likes to make about, oh yeah, Trump might be doing these dictator decisions and policies and whatever. And he even said he would be a dictator on day one, and he's been quoting Hitler and all these other things. But it's always, it could be this, he's joking or whatever. And it's not, he's not coming out and calling himself a Nazi, but it's like, obviously anybody who does that is going to be branded as a Nazi. But if they say, "Oh, I'm not a Nazi, I'm this or I'm that," then people are dumb enough to think, "Oh, even though they do the exact same thing as Nazis, maybe they're not Nazis." So I find that very, very interesting. And to further that point, in that clip we saw from The Daily Show, I believe it was Hegseth who talks about Venezuela being the Al-Qaeda of our hemisphere. They just had the leader of Al-Qaeda at the White House. So, who's supporting Al-Qaeda here? It's crazy. And Al-Qaeda is another Iraq connection. So it's just like, no matter which way you look at it, we're spinning out of control here, I think, when it comes to reality, where we're losing touch and the right doesn't seem to notice. And, how can we bring back stability if we can't even agree on what the truth is?